Okay, well, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock and we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'll keep an eye on the waiting room as others may join us a few minutes late. Welcome to the Cottonwood Creek Watershed Public Scoping Meeting. We are very excited to have you all with us today as we present to you the beginnings of what we think is an exciting project. My name is Elizabeth Spalding. I am with JUB Engineers, and I am the public involvement lead on this project. So my job here today is to help answer your questions and collect your comments and direct you to where you can submit formal comments during our public scoping process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this meeting. Before we dive into our presentation and our introductions, I want to give you a little bit of an overview of how we're going to use our Zoom meeting tonight. Some of you may be living on Zoom. Some of you may have somehow avoided it over the last 9 months. So just so you know, if you'd like to name yourself today, you can take your mouse and hover over your face on the screen. 3 little dots should appear at the top of your face. And if you click on that, a drop-down menu offers you a rename function. Feel free to type in your name, and if you're representing an organization tonight, you can share that as well. That just helps us know who's in the meeting tonight. Some tips around how we can manage our sound control. We have a few enough people today that I think we can probably have some discussion, but if you're not speaking or when we're in presentation mode, I encourage you to keep yourself on mute. That will help us reduce that background noise. If you want to ask questions or comments without kind of speaking, feel free to use the chat function. So if you go to the bottom of your screen and hover your mouse, a little chat icon should be at the bottom in the middle. Click on that. You can either send questions to the group or you can send questions to me. If you are having technical issues, feel free to chat me directly and I will try to help you troubleshoot those. When we move into the Q&A portion of this meeting, if you have your camera on, you can just flag me like this. That'll let me know you have a question and I'll invite you in. And if you would like to use the raised hand button, you can just hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen on participants, click on that. It'll give you like a little raised hand icon. Click on that. I'll see it and I'll know that you have a question. We do have just an hour this evening to cover a lot of content. So if you want to submit those questions over chat, I suspect we'll have a lot of common questions. I will try to capture those, summarize them, and ask the group. But we may not have time for all those questions. So if we get near the end of the hour and you still have questions you'd like us to follow up on, throw those in the chat. I'll make sure they get pulled into the meeting summary and we will try to follow up with you after the meeting. The only other thing that I would say today is that we are going to be popping in and out of presentation mode and discussion mode. So feel free to, again, put that camera on when we're in discussion mode. That'll just help us have a little bit more of a feel for dialogue. Okay, I would love to, before we dive into the presentation, introduce to you the project team that will be leading and developing this project. So first, I'd like to start with our lead agency. Bruce Sandoval, would you mind introducing yourself and maybe some of the team from Nrcs?
I wouldn't mind, Elizabeth. Thank you and welcome everyone. Yeah, I'm Bruce Sandoval. I'm the state conservation engineer for Natural Resources Conservation Service here in Idaho. And I'm also the program manager for the Watersheds program that we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm not certain. I think I saw 3 or 4 of our staff in the list, but I would actually just ask that they introduce themselves so that I don't miss anyone, please.
Great. Maureen, do you want to go first?
Sure, I have to unmute. Maureen Pepper, Water Quality Specialist in the state office in Boise.
Great, thank you. Darren?
Darren Brem, I'm the Culture Resource Specialist, Archaeologist, State Office, Boise.
Great, thank you. Jen, let's go to you next.
I'm Jen Skeldon. I am the biologist out of the state office in Boise.
Great. And Tricia, did you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tricia Craycroft. I'm the area conservationist, so I supervise all of the field offices on the west half of Idaho.
Great. Did I miss anyone from NRCS?
Jared Everson, Conservation Team Leader for Team 4, which covers Idaho County, so I'm the local NRCS contact.
Excellent, glad to have you. Okay, Amy up north, she's got quite a few of our project sponsors in the room. Amy, did you want to quickly introduce our project sponsors and maybe yourself as well while you're there?
You bet. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight. I guess, do you want to kick off, Pepper, with a quick, Mayor Pepper Harmon is here from the city. I'll just run introductions if that's cool with you. Carol Altman is here, the city clerk, and then we've got Roy Uhlenkott in the back as the city public works director. So that's kind of the team that's here, and then several members of the public as well that have some interest in the project. I am Amy Upmore. I work as a project engineer for JUB Engineers. We're a consultant on the project, and I'm helping out Derek and John, who'll be taking over some intros here next.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Ken Helm. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. My name's Ken Helm. I'm with the Idaho Transportation Department. I'm sitting down in Lewiston and District 2 office, and glad to be here.
Great. Did I miss any project sponsors who maybe snuck in without me noticing? Okay, so we're going to turn it to our JUB team. John, how about you go first?
Hi, thanks, Elizabeth. This is John Watson with JUB, project manager, and I work out of the Lewis Clark office.
Great, thanks. And Derek, let's go to you next.
Sure. My name is Derek Moss. I'm an environmental and NEPA specialist with JUB Engineers. I'll be working on this environmental assessment and kind of seeing it through the process.
Great, thanks. Garrett, let's go to you next.
Yeah, I'm Garrett Fry. I'm leading the design charge for the flooding portion of this project. I'm also a former resident of Cottonwood, so it's close to home for me.
Excellent. Let's see, Bryce.
Yes, I'm Bryce Wilcox, project engineer for JUB Engineers, just here supporting John and Amy on the project.
Great, thank you. And Lexi, I saw you sneak in. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lexi Conley. I'm an environmental planner and I'm out of the Spokane office.
Great, thank you. Anyone from JUB that I missed today? Okay, let me let one more person in from the waiting room. All right, so again, as I said, we have a lot to cover tonight. So how this is going to work, we're going to provide you a presentation, and then we're going to leave lots of time for Q&A at the end of that. As we move through the presentation, just for the sake of time, if you have questions or comments, submit those through the chat while we're in presentation mode. We'll start with those questions once we are finished with the presentation, and then we'll move into more of a dialogue. So again, we're going to start with presentation, give you a project overview, and then we will move into a question and answer session. So John, I'm going to pull up the, actually that's still there. So how about let me know when you want me to move the slides forward.
Now would be great, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Okay.
Just to reiterate, the whole JUB team is extremely excited to be a part of this project. We know it's an important task and a need for the community, and we don't take that lightly. So just to present a little background on the project and the challenges that we're faced with, we're looking at primarily two major challenges that the city's faced with. The first is flooding problems. As most of you already know, the Main Street area from the Cottonwood Creek drainage runs through the heart of the downtown. And many years and decades, probably since the beginning of the town, this area has been flooded on a regular basis. Another area that we're looking at is up along the what we call the King Street drainage. up through the fairgrounds to the northwest portion of the city. The infrastructure that is used to carry these flood flows is aging, undersized, and there's really no place for the water to go except above ground, and which causes all the damage. The other primary challenge that we're looking at is water quality issues, primarily from the wastewater treatment lagoon system, the treated effluent that discharges into Cottonwood Creek. This effluent does not currently meet all of the state water quality criteria, and ultimately affecting the water quality of the Cottonwood Creek watershed. As I said, these have been ongoing problems, and the city has been looking for solutions and funding to solve these challenges for quite some time, because the magnitude of these challenges are well beyond the city's ability to fund them themselves. About a year ago, an opportunity was presented to the city to apply for funding through the Nrcs PL 566 Watershed Protection and Flood Protection Program. Ultimately, this funding was approved, and the city entered into an agreement with the Nrcs last summer, and subsequently the city hired JUB engineers to complete a watershed plan environmental assessment. We'll refer to that as a Watershed Plan EA. This plan will study potential solutions to these challenges and look at ways to best serve the community and the funding program. Again, the co-sponsors with the city, the Idaho Transportation Department, they have a vested interest in the project, as the US 95 business loop runs through town via King Street and Main Street. And also the Cottonwood Highway District also has an interest in it, as the drainage continues down east of town, where the creek crosses two structures, one on East Road and one on Airport Road, that also are hindering the flood flows. Just to give a background on the Nrcs watershed program, I'd like to turn it over to Bruce to give a little history and a background on the program.
Yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate that. And I'll try to do that. I know a lot of the folks on the call tonight, and I'm happy to report a lot are new, right? There with Amy, as well as I see folks in their living rooms and what have you. Other than that, I know a lot of you guys have heard this already, but I'll try to address my remarks to the new folks. Yeah, so the Nrcs program that we're bringing to the table is the Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Program. We sometimes call it the Watershed Operations Program, excuse me, or an even shorter nickname, if you will, is a PL 566, which of course, as you can see there, comes from the public law that has the original authorities, which is actually 83-566. So it's even further shortened to PL 566. I'll try to just say that as we move through here. You know, I'm not going to read the sentences, but you can see, you know, we have local sponsors that are part of this program. That's a little different for Nrcs. If any of you out there are familiar with Nrcs and our other, I'll call them more mainstream programs. But it comes in 3 phases, and those are the first 3 bullets there you see. A planning phase, a design phase, and a construction phase. And you'll see that this project has been funded just for the planning phase, and that's what we're doing now. As John already said, we're working, and the end product of this planning phase will be what we call a watershed plan dash EA, meaning environmental assessment, if that's what it turns out to be, as we suspect. The bottom part of this first slide is, you know, I guess 7 bullets there, the typical benefits or project purposes that the program is used for. Of course, flood prevention right there is the first one. Next slide, please. This is the last slide, but really what we do and what we're developing here, as I said, with the product being the Watershed Plan EA is three things. It's at its core, it's the NEPA process and NEPA compliance, but it also, this Watershed Plan -EA, and I say that again, it's not just an environmental assessment, it's a little more than that. It also includes requirements from the law itself, the original law, as well as we have to follow what are referred to as PRNG, and there's the long name. If you want to read that and Google it, you'll find some more detailed information. But really what that's about is it forces us to do economic analysis on the alternatives that we identify to address the resource concerns that we're identifying. And then the last three checkmark things are just that, yeah, this whole Watershed Plan EA will document the planning and decision-making process. It has these overlapping requirements that I just talked about. And as I said, the final product will be a Watershed Plan environmental assessment, or if it turns out, it'll be an environmental impact statement. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. So some of you that have attended project open houses and presentations, you might come to this thinking that you're going to see detailed plans of what we're thinking, of what things that we've already decided, but that is definitely not the case. What the purpose of this scoping meeting is to gather initial input, concerns, let you know that we're starting these studies and planning process to find the best solution to meet the goals and objectives of the community and of the Watershed program. Any and all discussions and ideas that any of us have chatted with you about, those have only been concept ideas, and no decisions have been made for the Watershed Plan or for the design or construction. We are really starting from a blank slate so that we can best incorporate the project with valuable input. And we want your public input of the needs and goals and concerns, and discuss any initial issues that you might have in the development of the plan. That's within the purpose of the Watershed program. So just to go through some of the goals that we are looking at for the project, and how these goals fit within the program. Just discussing each of them briefly. First one is flood prevention. So obviously the benefits of the flood prevention is to reduce the damages, the costly impacts of these flood events, and hopefully not have to deal with that again. I thought it was a fitting. We have a young engineer that grew up in Cottonwood, and when he heard of this project, he said, "You mean we don't have to go downtown and sandbag Main Street anymore?" So I thought that was a pretty real assessment of the impact of this project. So to look at potential alternatives, we're going to be evaluating many things. We're going to be studying and planning for the paths for the water to go. We'll be doing hydrology and hydraulic studies, evaluate piping system, box culverts, improve inlet and outlet structures, channel improvements. Like I said, there's limited conveyance systems currently in place. And as you well know, the the creek is piped underneath Rainer's Grocery and at the back door of several buildings. So this is a huge impact and a goal of the project to solve those issues. Another goal is a sediment load reduction. So the benefits of decreasing the sediment loads in the water is of course improvement to the watershed of Cottonwood Creek. Some of the options we'll look at for that of protection of the stream banks and possibly reducing the velocities through those stream banks to help alleviate the sediment leaving the stream. We'll also look at options of creating detention basins along the waterway to temporarily hold back the flood flows and release them to reduce the peak flows to help the situation. We'll study those options and see if they fit into the projects. Another goal is the water quality improvements. Again, the benefits are obvious to improve our water quality levels, and the primary focus on this item is to evaluate the treated water being released from the lagoons and potentially reduce or eliminate that discharge to the creek. And to fit within the NRCS program, this option needs to benefit agricultural improvements in some way. So that dovetails into the next goal of agricultural water management. So what do we do with this stored water? As you know, the existing agroforest that's out by the lagoons, that is a treatment of the effluent. So in this case, we are looking at providing a benefit to access irrigation water system for agricultural uses. We'll see how that plays out, how that works with the area and study that to see if this is a good option. The last goal is an increased recreational opportunity. As part of the Watershed program or the PL 566 program, recreation improvements are also eligible. So through the process, a goal to help recreation is to provide a safe access to the recreational ball fields that currently don't have a pedestrian infrastructure connectivity to them right now. And specifically, we're looking at the ball fields on the west side of town, just past, west of the railroad tracks there. So we'll consider options to installing sidewalks or pathways or some sort of connectivity from the existing infrastructure on Main Street to this property. Next slide, please, Elizabeth. Right there. So this is a general overview of the project areas, and three main focuses here. The blue area we're designating as the areas that we'll be studying for flood improvements to one, look at the east-west corridor there, the Cottonwood Creek alignment, as well as the north section, which we refer to as the King Street drainage area. The green area encompasses the existing agroforest and lagoons, and potentially areas that might benefit from agricultural irrigation assistance as well. And then the orange area, we're looking at that as the pedestrian connectivity. So maybe I'll share my screen to just show those in a little bit better detail. So just on Google Earth here, you can obviously see the Cottonwood Creek drainage coming through town as it enters town, goes across Front Street, and then down adjacent parallel to Main Street and out to the east. So in addition, the Cottonwood Highway District's facilities, there's one crossing just west of the lagoons, and then there's another crossing just at the intersection of East Road and Airport Road that we'll also be looking at. So, and then the King Street drainage obviously goes up King Street and meanders through in between buildings, through the fairgrounds, and then up through residential and business infrastructure right now. So those areas will be looked at and studied. As far as the existing agroforest is located in the green right here, existing lagoons. We'll be looking at a detention basin or a storage facility for that effluent, see if there's opportunities to do that, as well as potential for irrigation of surrounding agricultural uses. And then as we go at the pedestrian connectivity, the ball fields are located over here. Currently, there's no sidewalk or pathway to get to those. And we'll look at what connectivity might be explored for those, for the benefit of access to recreation. And just to share a few pictures, Elizabeth, if you wanted to pop those up. Here's some pictures that many of you probably already seen, flooding right along Main Street, looking to the west. Go ahead and go to the next one. And then the existing agroforest that's currently being irrigated through the treated effluent from the lagoons. So just to reiterate, we're looking at those three primary projects in working through this study. And again, the main goals: flood protection within the city, the water quality, and solving the wastewater treatment effluent, and then providing agricultural irrigation a benefit there too, and then the pedestrian safety improvements. So again, we are just starting this planning process. Reiterate that no decisions have been made. We're going to use input, models, studies, plannings. We don't know the answers yet to what is going to be needed. But we wanted your input before we proceed down those avenues. Just to talk through the environmental process, I'm going to turn it over to Derek Moss to discuss that process and anticipated timeline.
Great, thanks, John. Appreciate it. This section will be very brief. Just wanted to give an overview of NEPA, talk real briefly about what that is, because there's federal money involved in this project, and because there's some jurisdiction federal jurisdiction, then the NEPA process is required. So NEPA, as many of you are familiar already, is the National Environmental Policy Act. And under NEPA, when NEPA is required, it's to ensure that we maximize the benefits of the project and that we reduce and minimize any potential impacts. So that is the goal. We want to maximize the benefits of this project and reduce any potential negative adverse impacts, if any. So in order for us to determine if there are impacts, we need to go through this process. And so that's part of what we do. As has been pointed out many times tonight, we're in the very initial phases of this. So as you can see there on the left, the initiate environmental assessment, that's the first blue box there. And within that, there's quite a few steps. One of those is to conduct a public scoping meeting. That's what we're doing tonight. We're also continuing to collect baseline data. We're looking at the area and trying to determine what the current status is of both the built and natural environment. And then we'll move into developing alternatives, and that's where your input is key. As we start to develop those alternatives, we'll need your input on kind of what those alternatives should look like and what should be included. And then we'll just move through the process, and there's quite a few steps in here. As you can see, we'll continue to collect data. There'll be field work that's associated with this project, meaning we'll send out subject matter experts into the field to study biological resources, water resources, cultural resources, and various other things. And then as we develop the alternatives and we look at those resources and cross-reference them, we'll start to determine and analyze those alternatives and determine which ones are best and which ones help and meet the goals and objectives of this project the best. And then we'll develop what's called the draft environmental assessment. And the draft environmental assessment, it will go through a pretty rigorous review process. There'll be a lot of folks involved in that review, including the city and others. Of course, Nrcs and other federal agencies and state agencies. And then that draft will get released, and there will be an opportunity at that point again for folks to review the draft and comment on it. And so we look forward to that. And that's anticipated as far as timeline goes, probably sometime in 2022. This process, although streamlined, does take time because we've got to go through all those steps and make sure we're checking all the boxes and doing everything we need to do. So that's where we are. Again, I also second any comments that we are excited about this project. We look forward to the benefits of it, and we want to make sure that we go through this process. So that's all I had. Elizabeth, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you. So as Derek mentioned, we're just now starting our public comment process as a part of the scoping phase. Today is the kickoff of that 30-day comment period. We've extended it a few days because of the weekend and a holiday. So we did say February 15th. We didn't realize February 16th was a day that many of you will be off enjoying yourselves. So we will, or February 15th, so we will take comments through February 16th. We prefer written comments, so that's how we can make sure that those comments get into the scoping report and can be considered during the development of those alternatives. So there are two ways you can submit written comments. The first is here. This is my hard copy address. If you want to write a letter and stick it in the mail, you can send it to 2760 West Excursion Lane, Meridian, Idaho 83642. You can also send it to our project email, and that's cottonwoodcreek@idwatershed.com. If you have any questions where you just want to talk about the project or kind of learn a little bit more about the project details as we have them at this point, feel free to reach me on my cell phone at 208-685-9361. If it's a technical question, I can't answer it, but I can put you in touch with our fabulous team. And we can make sure that you're getting those questions answered before you submit any of those formal comments. But just to reiterate, hearing back from the public is critical. We're really interested in what your comments and your concerns are. And again, those comments will be captured in a scoping report and carried into the planning process. So your input is very important, and we want to make sure that you have all of the information you need to submit those comments. So I will bring this slide back up at the end of tonight just so that you can jot down any of this information if you need it once we get our Q&A finished. But what we have is about 25 minutes left. We want to start answering some of your initial questions and hearing some of your concerns. So let's start with questions for clarification. Is there anything that's still unclear or that you'd like a little bit more information on? And again, you can throw those questions into the chat. You can turn your camera on and flag me, or you can also just use your raised hand button at the bottom of your screen. No questions? Amy, how about in your room? Anything at the city?
No, it sounds like there's no questions as far as what's been presented at this point.
Okay.
I could give a question.
Yes.
Is there a possibility that the certain areas of the creek could be deepened to handle more water, as well as to replace or establish culverts where creek crossings have either been washed out or need to be established?
Could you hear that question okay, Elizabeth?
John, did you hear that, or should Amy repeat that?
Yeah, if you could repeat that a little bit. I didn't get all of it.
Sure, if it's okay, I'll try to summarize and you correct me if the question had to do with if there's intent to look and review at deepening the creeks to handle the flow in that fashion and replace culverts that are undersized. Does that summarize your question?
Replace them or put them in where they're needed.
Replace them or put them in where they're needed.
Yes, those options will be looked at and considered through the analysis. The geometry of the channels, the sizing of the pipes, those will all be analyzed based on the flood events and the data that we have for the anticipated flows.
Just to elaborate, the creek goes through my property in town, and I think it's in the orange strip area. And it has already washed out a culvert and a bridge, limiting, or actually eliminating, access to my property. I would just like that to be considered.
Yeah, absolutely. We will we'll consider that and look at that.
Great question. Other questions? John, I see you talking, but you're muted. So if you take your mouse and hover it over your face, you should be able to unmute. There you go.
Okay, I found the button. I received this invitation in the mail, and I'm actually a property owner, ag land further west, past where the blue area is. And I guess my question is it's up towards the headwaters of the Cottonwood Creek. Is this a program or project going to impact me, let's say, a couple miles west of Cottonwood? I guess that's my question. Can you hear it?
Yeah, I think John Watson's just unmuting himself.
Yeah. I mean, depending on where your property is, it's hard for me to say whether or not it would impact, but
how about the foothills of the Cottonwood Butte?
Oh, most likely not. If you've got ideas that might fit into this program or help the situation, we'd love to hear from you later on or tonight or whatever. So.
Well, I didn't think it would be impacting me, but I did receive this invitation in the mail. So that's just my, curiosity, coming forth, because my property is up on the Cottonwood Butte area. And so I guess the reason is, why did I receive the invitation to join this meeting?
We wanted to do a really broad stroke invitation, a really wide range of property owners, just to make sure that we reached out effectively to everyone.
All right, well, thank you. That's the only question I had.
Okay. Thank you, John. Other questions?
Elizabeth, maybe I can respond to that too, John. I appreciate the question. There's kind of two parts to that, and if anyone in the meeting, if your property were to be directly affected, meaning there's potential for in the case that the creek runs through your backyard or other is a good example of one, you absolutely would be contacted and as we move forward in the project. And then part two is if you're indirectly affected, to your point, John, we invited everyone in the area because there is potential for this project to benefit the entire watershed. That is the purpose of the program, is watershed protection. And so you're in the watershed, and so how your property is affected may be different than someone else, but we still wanted to reach out to everyone and make sure that they were involved in the process. So yeah, thanks for the question. And
I appreciate the invitation. I am concerned because of my family history down there in Cottonwood.
Sure. Yeah, understood.
Okay. That's all that
Other
I
questions?
had.
Amy. Okay, thank you, Jen. I see Amy's hand in the.
You bet. Thanks, Elizabeth. I think we've got a question here in the back.
Actually, I have two questions. One is, how far west is this blue area travel? And secondly, will this project remove some of the properties that are currently in the flood zone?
So to repeat that, there
Amy,
was,
you probably should, yep.
Yeah, sorry, to repeat that, there was two questions. The first question is, how far west does the blue area reach that's identified in the project area? And the second question, I missed my notes on. Can you repeat the second question, Don?
There's current properties in the flood zone, my house being one of them, that would this remove some of these properties out of the flood zone?
Would the project result in removal of properties from the flood zone?
I guess I'll chat about that. As far as how far west does this project go, we've drawn in pretty vague lines through there on purpose, as we don't have the answers exactly to that, but the intent of the direction to the west is looking at those detention basin opportunities. If there's a situation that makes it look like it would be advantageous to consider a detention basin upstream, we'd take a look at that. The purpose of those basins, as you can imagine, they temporarily hold back that surge of flood flow and help reduce that heavy flows during those flood events through the heart of the town. So that improves the chances of keeping those floodwaters where they need to go and where they should go. So if there's opportunities out there between property owners and geography and things like that, that something like that will work, we'd like to explore that. So that's not a hard and straight answer. We don't have it at X, Y, or Z road that we're going to stop looking, but that's what this process is for, is to get people's ideas and concerns and thoughts on those types of improvements. And as far as the removal of the property within the flood zone, I'm not an expert in that, but I believe that would have to be reevaluated by FEMA once improvements are made. And maybe Bryce or Garrett or somebody might be able to chime in on that a little bit more.
John, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think you're right on the money with if there was a reeval, I think it'd have to come from FEMA. FEMA establishes those floodplains. Bryce, I don't know if you have any more experience with that sort of scenario.
Garrett's frozen, so Bryce, this might be your chance to jump in.
Okay, I thought I was frozen. So no, I think you're right on. At the end of the project, we'll submit the improvements. We'll get those, they'll be constructed. It'll have an impact to the flood zones, and then they can be reevaluated by FEMA and others to see what kind of impacts that makes. Unless, Bruce, is there any other input on the FEMA where that coordinates with another federal agency?
Well, I'm not sure that I have an answer for any different answer than what y'all have already said there with regards to floodplain designations. What I can add is that under this PL 566 program, costs associated with securing permits and land rights, whether you're talking about purchasing or purchasing outright or establishing easements, those are the responsibility of the local sponsors. The NRCS, in this case, the program does not pay for land rights. We pay for a lot of the stuff, and at a very significant percentage. Even some of it is 100% cost share, if you want to use that term, but it does not apply to land rights. That would be up to some sponsor like City of Cottonwood or the Highway District or whatever. Even, and in many cases, right, that makes a lot of sense, is let's just get that structure out of the floodplain or whatever.
Kent and Kathleen, did I see a hand?
I was gonna just jump in
Kent,
quick.
you're muted. Hold on real quick. I think Kent has a question. There we go.
Is that working? Hi, Elizabeth.
There you go. Yep.
Hey, I'm excited about this project. 40 years ago, we didn't have these storms more than like once every 5 years, but it seems like the last 10 years, every couple of years, we have a major storm that blows through Cottonwood, and I have the property right below it, and it always pushes the creek to the boundary. So, if we can get some help to get this fixed, I'm really for it, and I'll be, whatever you guys need, I'm there for you guys. So anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, let's go to you. You had something to say, and then I've got a comment coming in from the chat.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I was just trying to follow up with Don and make sure he felt like his question was answered, and he does. So you can move on to the chat.
Okay, great. So I think associated with some of this discussion already, the question is, so the farmers on the edge of town might be affected. Are we talking levees, ponds, green belts? Who would like to take that one?
Amy, you want to take that one?
Yeah, definitely. So there are some properties that have been identified to utilize as the potential solutions for some of the water quality issues that were identified. We've been in contact with those landowners and are really working to develop what we believe will be a solution for everyone. But at this point, of course, we're just pretty early in the process to know where that will ultimately land. But yes, there will definitely be some impact if it's agreeable to the landowner. We really need to have that relationship and agreement in place before anything would be done.
Thank you, Amy. We have about 10 minutes before we need to wrap up. So additional questions, anything that's concerning you that you want to get a little bit more information about? Okay, well, Okay, go ahead, Cheryl.
Is it possible that the flood situation can be handled just pretty much within the city limits with the changing of the direction of the water and the new piping and whatever else happens? Has that even been thought of?
Yeah, that is definitely an alternative that we'll look at. Is sizing that pipe to meet those flows. The benefit of some of the upstream improvements, you know, every structure and every system has a potential to fail with something that gets plugged up in it or something like that to obstruct it. So things upstream can help that. Another benefit of attenuating those flows would be to possibly decrease the required size of that pipes in case we have utility conflicts, such as sanitary sewer, which most of that's at fairly fixed grade. So that is definitely an option that we are going to consider is sizing those piping improvements to not need anything upstream too. So.
Other questions? Comments? Well, we certainly don't have to stay all night, so let me go ahead and share my contact information again. So as you know, you sit with some of this information, maybe some additional questions are going to come to mind tomorrow. We would love to continue to answer those questions for you. So again, feel free to reach out to us at either the Cottonwood Creek at idwatershed.com email address. You can call me on my cell phone, 208-685-9361. Or if you'd prefer to submit a handwritten comment, you can also do that at the address here. For formal comments, again, we do want those to be submitted by February 16th. We're going to continue the conversation with the community past that though, right? So we'll always be available to answer questions as this moves through kind of the assessment process. We've got local folks on the ground who can come out and look at, you know, your property with you if we need to get there and kind of address site-specific questions. So we do want to, you know, invite you to continue to reach out even though the public scoping comment period ends on February 16th. Project team, before we wrap up, anything else that you would like to say? Or Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Well, you've got this slide up on the screen still. You know, at one point down there on the bottom, it talks about additional information at NRCS Idaho's website. I do not have that additional information posted yet, but I promise that by the end of next week, you'll be able to find this, and you know, this we'll probably have this this set of slides up on the website. When you get there, if you go there, you'll also see two other PL 566 projects that we've got going on in the state of Idaho. We're going to group them. There will be 3 of them, so I just wanted to mention that if somebody went there tonight, you're not going to find it tonight, but by the end of next week, you will.
Absolutely. Amy.
Yeah, we've got, I think, one more question from the crowd and then maybe some closing comments from Pepper.
Great.
Well, I came just a little late and caught the tail end of your introductory statements about the scope of this project. And I could see that you were going over the map that you sent out. Could you just briefly go over that again, particularly focus on the orange strip called the pedestrian area? That's where my property is right in that strip.
You bet. In this map, doesn't show the detail that you're probably looking for, and I'm wondering if maybe I can. Do
you want to pull up Google Earth?
You bet. Let me. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
So our goal right now is to connect point A to point B, which point A being the ball fields over here, and point B being infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure down Lewiston Street area, Lewiston Main Street area. So where that might go, we don't know yet. Our preference would be, well, I don't even know if I wouldn't even say our preference. An option would be to stay within the existing right-of-way to do that. Other options, well, what if we did a pathway along the creek, or to take in the creek side? That's an option. We don't have a firm solution or alignment for what that might look like or where that might be. So if you've got concerns or things that you'd like to bring to the table, we would definitely love to listen.
Okay, I think with the last few minutes, let's hand it to Pepper for some closing comments.
Yeah, he had one follow-up question, but was on mute, so you could not hear.
Oh, okay.
Again, I'm sorry, Elizabeth.
Wait, what did you just ask, Amy?
Could you please pull up the Google map again? He wanted to describe the location.
Oh. John, I'll let you do that.
There it is.
The road you're scrolling along.
Front Street?
Yes, you can see that there's the trestle crossing the road right in the middle of it.
Yep.
Right? And then on the very top, you can see that very large structure, which is the hospital. The big white roof.
Yep.
Okay, my property sits between the trestle and that building where you got yes, that one. So it's just a rather green, yeah, right there. And so to my back is the hospital, and to the front is that road. And Cottonwood Creek crosses it diagonally. Yes. And I had a bridge and a culvert giving me access to that high side of the property, but it's been washed out. And so yes, you can see the creek a bit there. Yes, right there. That's where right where your cursor is where the bridge was.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that could be helped with?
I don't know the answer to that right now, but that's definitely something that we will look into.
Okay, great.
Okay, if there's
Amy, I'll let your room keep the floor.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth.
All right, on behalf of the City of Cottonwood, I want to first thank everybody at Nrcs, JUB Engineering's, Clearwater Economic Development Agency, all of our co-sponsors, and everybody that came here tonight to participate in the public comment. This is a great opportunity for the City of Cottonwood to fix a lot of problems that are ailing our small town. And the also benefit of that is we can improve the watershed at the same time. So we're at the very beginning of this. We got a long ways to go. I just wanted to thank you all for your time and your effort in helping us address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, project team, any last words before we close it out?
I was just going to add, there's going to be a whole lot of work done in the next 6 months. So some of you might be hearing a lot from us. If you don't hear from us, then potentially that's things aren't looking in your direction or something to that effect. But we've got our work cut out for us the next 6 months, and things are going to be busy. So looking forward to seeing how everything shakes out.
Great, thank you. Okay, it is 7:01. We are very appreciative of everyone joining us today. Again, please do reach out with additional questions and comments. Keep an eye out for the slide deck and the presentation on that NRCS webpage, and have a great evening, everyone. Okay, bye-bye.